are the answers to the questions that you haven't asked. More numbers don't mean better, sometimes they just slow the task. But you can predict the future if you look into the past. With the ratio, you'll move towards your goal. Chasing lights alone won't be a guide. And if you know at least which lights you can't decide, and you can do it if you leave behind your pride. And by the end you'll be grooving like a rock star. You can't even imagine, you won't even know how far. And by the end maybe you'll even get hired. Yeah, stay mellow, you're the digital data hero. 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 Visualizing data for the first time. The data peaks and valleys sink, yeah, that's alright. Does it shift or stay steady? Does it change by category? Why does it matter? Why 5 times? Chasing bikes alone won't be a guide. And if you know at least which lights you can decide, and you can do it if you leave behind your pride. And by the end you'll be grooving like a rock star. You can't even imagine, you won't even know how far. And by the end maybe you'll even get hired. Yeah, stay mellow, you're the digital data hero. 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 And by the end you'll be grooving like a rock star. You can't even imagine, you won't even know how far. And by the end maybe you'll even get hired. Yeah, stay mellow, you're the digital data hero. You're the digital data hero. You're the digital data hero.
All right, hey everyone. Welcome to Take Two Intro to Digital Analytics with Tableau. So today, just a really simple goal of opening up Tableau with it activated and being able to import some data and look at it and sort of explore different pieces of the interface of Tableau. So no huge goal here, just sit back, relax, kind of get a feel for how we move through the software application, and don't worry too much about replicating a certain feature or something like that. This is just a start to how we interact with it, and much more will be to come. You're in the right place if this is the first time you've opened up anything like Tableau or Excel, and we're just ready to explore and see what we can do to get a little bit more into analyzing social media and web data, from e-commerce and A/B testing to a lot of great stuff with Twitter and cross-channel across to TikTok and much more. So let's just dive right in. We've got Tableau installed already. If you don't have that, go to the Tableau website and install it. We have class product keys for my own class, and you can also request a product key if you are a student somewhere else, or if you're an adult, you can pay at least $80 for a license, if not much more if you're a corporation, which has like the server access and stuff like that. So it's really kind of them that they offer Tableau server and actually server and desktop. We'll be using desktop here because it's a lot more powerful. They have a web version of it that we'll be doing a little bit of work with later as the weeks go on, and we publish to the web with Tableau Public. But right now, desktop is the fastest and easiest way to do things. You can add the product key here. So if it asked you when you installed, obviously that's an easy way to click through there and add a product key. You can click manage product keys, and I won't click it since it has my key in there, but that's where you would also go to update it, or if you got a new computer, you would go to help manage product keys and then cut and paste or type in the key there. So this is what you would see, except for it's got my recent files open, so it's probably a little bit more blank for you in Tableau. But over on the left, you can see Connect To. If you already have something else up and this Connect To menu isn't there, you will have a data menu and you can add a new data source. So we'll look at that later as we add more things in. You can see some options here. So usually in what I teach, we'll be using Microsoft Excel files or CSV files, which are under the More button there. If you're in a role after this in a company, most likely you're connecting to some type of SQL server, probably MySQL, or if it's like a big database of orders on something like a site like a wireless phone provider, and they've got all of the orders for the entire country, it might be something like an Oracle database or something else. But don't worry about that too much for now. Right now, let's click into some Excel data. So it's been an interesting weekend for football. So I've got a lot of data that I pulled from Twitter and from one of my favorite tools is Rival IQ, which we'll use in a few weeks to pull in all sorts of data. I went ahead and did that this week now just to explore it. We'll show you how to actually get that data for 4 companies of a competitive set in that session coming up in the future. So that's what we're going to start with. So I also brought in some Twitter data, but we'll do that next. So let's go ahead and pull this up. So this is cross-channel social data. That means across Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube is what Rival IQ has access to at least. What they did really amazingly for us, they have their own metrics and dashboards and everything that you can look at themselves, but you can bring this in yourself. So why this is really valuable, especially if you're working for a brand, you have a lot of data that the public doesn't have access to. So this people can find out your Facebook likes, your engagement rates, and things like that. And you're also going to have different types of data, like, customer service chats. You're going to have, affiliate marketing or, promotions or influencers and the rates that you pay them and when that calendar for their post went live. So we're going to cover a lot of those topics, but that's the reason why we use Tableau. So yes, Google Analytics has a lot of data right there about a kind of medium-sized site probably, and Adobe Analytics has those bigger sites, and they have a lot within those on their own, and like Facebook especially, but we really want to have the data together so we can stitch it together so eventually we can tell a data story and have that linked together. Right now, so we just pulled in a bunch of social media data, but what we need to do first is check to see how it came in. So Tableau does its best to guess at what the data fields are as far as a data type. So ABC is a text string, and we're in this data source tab, which is the one on the lower left, and it guessed that it was text, so it was correct. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but what I really want to watch out for is dates. So this one figured out date pretty easily. Like, yes, it seems easy, but there are so many date formats around the world, obviously, like, Europe and America switch the month and day, and then there's different ways you can put the time after as far as formatting, and it is a lot harder than it sounds. So there's a lot of things in data about quality of the data and making sure everything is clean enough so that you can use it and there's not any incorrect junk data or anything like that. That's a much bigger issue and always has been than you would guess, but obviously AI and things like that are helping us with certain things, but there's still going to be some gaps in that, but we want to make sure this is correct. So we've got a little calendar icon there. If it's not there, you would click and choose whether it's date or date and time, like we'll look at later with the Twitter data, because Twitter, you want to know exactly when that tweet was sent. Looks like the number of followers, it came in as a number. That's great. Note there's also 2 types of numbers. Like, you wouldn't have 1.89.2 million followers, you would have the whole number, so you can't have half a follower, for example. So it figured that out, but just make sure that those are there in the right way. But we are good to go really with this data. We're going to hop right into that sheet 1 tab. So just like Excel or some of the other software programs we'll be using, it has a sheet. And so we will be doing multiple sheets. So you keep the same file predominantly when you're working on a project or something like that. You have it all in one place. You can have all sorts of data and all sorts of tabs or sheets, and we'll rename those as we go. You'll see that as a new sheet. You can press that little button on the bottom next to the sheets to create a new one. There's also dashboards, which are a collection of graphs, and there's stories, which we'll get to much later on, that you can have a step-by-step walkthrough of multiple graphs, so you can kind of facilitate a little easier way of telling that data story. So getting a little familiar with the interface here, on the left we have the table. So we have one table, and it's broken up into two sections. So Tableau used to say this: the top part is what is called the dimensions section. So dimensions really are things like categories or dates that you graph things across that are like metrics, which is going to be our next issue coming up here. We've got a number of metrics here that are accidentally in the dimensions section. So these are measures. They are things you are tracking, like comments, likes, angers, and sads up here in this case on the Facebook reactions. And so how we would change that mistake down here is to right click or command click if you're on a Mac, and then convert it to a measure. It is correctly a number, but it didn't get down here below this line that separates the dimensions from the measures. So we're good there. You can select multiple and command click on them and then convert them there. So all of these are numbers that should be measures. So you can go ahead and convert those if you would like. But let's see, I want to pick what I want to work with, and I'm not going to do all of them. So let's start with TikTok average posts per day. So what I really want us to get moving towards is beyond just metrics like likes or reactions, but into these things that are ratios, because then you can compare them a lot more. So for example, if I posted one post per day and got 1 million likes, and then the next person posts 100 posts and got 1,000 likes per post. So you can really think about that efficiency and the effect. And so you can then start to analyze and see how good certain influencers are at driving likes per post, perhaps, or how ineffective some people are as well. So like, my Twitter post would average 0.01 likes. So even if one got 1 million, every other one forever gets 0.01. So it just helps us have a more comparative discussion when we're looking at different teams. So let's try a few things. How about TikTok average posts per day? We can drop that into the rows, and then TikTok average engagement per day. So right now we don't have date in, so we need to bring date in to see that trend over time. It's just doing that there. So on dates, we can click exact dates, and then this will give us all our posts. So we've got it set up as a dot chart. It chose automatically to make it shapes. And let's do, this is posts per day. So maybe we could do a bar chart. So that's kind of introducing this marks tab over here. There's 3 options so that you can choose all. So if I changed something here to bar, it would make both of them a bar chart, or I could change it to something else, and that's both. Now, if I just wanted to change it for the average post per day, I could do that. And then we're looking at engagement rates down here. Let's make that a circle. Or let's, oh, I did the same one again. All right, meant to click right here and then let's do a shape instead of a circle, because I could choose a little different shape there. I'm going to choose a star, and you can adjust the size there as well. There we go. It's a little more readable. And on color, you can actually make it a lighter opacity, so it's a little transparent. So that's kind of nice if you wanted to make it bigger. They're overlapping, but you can see where they kind of all overlap together, which is kind of nice. So again, you don't have to replicate all of these features immediately. I don't want to overwhelm you. It's just kind of this is, the different pieces of what you see on the screen. This Marks tab has shapes, it has color, and certainly move beyond just the default colors and try to change things up a little bit. And you can see how you can do these different things to make it more digestible. So one thing I'm going to do here too, another fun feature, I'm going to overlap these. So on that second one, I did a dual axis chart. So that means you have on the left and right two different axes, and then you can see them overlapping. So this kind of graph helps you see where there's a disparity between something that posts a lot and something that engages a lot. So we actually want to bring in our company name here. So our company name in this case are the football teams. And just briefly, since we got a lot of stuff going on there, I'm going to kind of cover up the axes, which, minimalism is actually something to talk about too. So as you get closer to presentations, you don't want to have every single number on there and every single axis if you don't need it. So you may be calling out one of these posts for, these don't really have a ton, but like say you're talking about a certain day, like a certain day they won the game, you could just let's take that one, right click on it or command click, and we can annotate that mark, and you can write something. It has the variables in there already, but you can adjust all of this, and then you can call it out. So later when you're telling a data story, this is the kind of thing you would do. Maybe you wouldn't have any numbers on the page except for this one, and you can see the general trend, but then you give it the little mark there with that peak of the posts. So Bengals, TikTok in the lead. So that's one thing I did there as well. So I double clicked on that sheet tab name. Never leave it as sheet one. That's just kind of a default that's there. It will auto populate in this title box. So you can double click on that title box, keep that sheet name there. That's what does that automatic thing. And as you duplicate these and learn how to make a whole bunch of different other variations that'll help you sort of tell different aspects of the data story, you can use this. And you can even change the color of that part, and obviously the font, get beyond the defaults into some better design and what you like for the style for your brand, and possibly matching the brand guidelines and things like that. You can then add text like on, caps on December, Bengals posted TikToks about the jungle. So there you go. Chiefs fan writing about Bengals is painful. Okay, so there we go. You can also hide different things like company names. So I would actually rename that because, they are companies in a sense, but they are definitely football teams. So remember, you can right click or command click on many of these things and you either rename it, or sometimes on this one, for example, alias is kind of the alias for the data, because we don't really change the underlying data in Tableau. The reason they designed Tableau this way, unlike Excel, is they have the raw data is separated from your design of the data. In Excel, there's many stories in my career and many others of just horrible nights fixing things where someone messed up a formula or changed the formatting and then caused some catastrophic thing that destroyed our sleep for multiple nights. That's why they have Tableau. The original database or Excel file that's on something is supposed to be untouched by you, like the business user, the product manager, the finance person, and you're working on the data, and you can still do calculations and change how it takes that raw data to do stuff like we were doing with the data types, but it doesn't change that original file. So this alias is a renaming of what's in the file. So it's not going back to that Excel file and deleting .com like I'm doing here. It's just taking that data from the raw data file, and then it knows to just not show us the .com. So that looks a little good, a little better. We can also double click on these axes and like, for example, I don't know if my pop-up's going to come up on the screen. Too many monitors. See? Okay, there you go. You can see edit axis, and you can write whatever you want down here. But in this case, those are obvious to me. I know what January is. I don't need to know it's a date. So anytime there's stuff that's super obvious, I would recommend not having it there. If your audience is new to something and they need to know, by all means, like have that and explain things so that way you can have the context of that. But there's certain things that are just, you know, pretty obvious. Like we know what a January is. So there you go. That is one graph on its own. Let's try something else fun. Let's do dates. So again, you can use this plus on date and it'll show you quarter and month and down to day. The other date menu is when you right click or command click on it and see this. Exact date will show us all the way through, and then also this continuous option. So what continuous means is you'll see these spaced out intervals along the axis instead of like every single date for all of the data you have for every day, especially if it's on time and I'm looking at 2,000 tweets. It'd be a little messy. So this is really what we want it to set up as. And so we're going to use the Facebook loves per day. And so it's in that wrong section. It's up there in the dimensions again. So we want to make, and it is a number, so that's good. We want to convert it to a measure though, because we want to graph it across time. So I'm going to drop that in there already. And we also want to bring in our football teams, which are down here now because of alphabetical order. And I'm going to bring the football teams as the color instead of bringing it on the graph. And now you can compare them over time and see where it goes. So you can try around, you know, what works best, like, you know, bar charts like this and line charts like that. And start to experiment with whatever you think works best for the point you're trying to make. You can see, look at that, on just after New Year's, the Bengals peak there on the Facebook loves, and you got some Chiefs action the other day when they had a pretty epic game versus Buffalo. So there you go. That's one way to do it. Now maybe let's see what else we can do. We've got angries per day, and we'll convert that again to a measure. There's a lot of them here. Most of the data we won't have this much data. This is probably the best data we'll get all semester when we do our projects and kind of go through a competitive analysis, because it's just got so much on every day for the last 30 days for your 4 competitors. It's quite a bit. So there you go. So now you have the angries and the loves. Let's see, maybe we make angries something different so we can see it like a shape, and maybe an X like something negative, and make it a lot bigger. So there you go. There's some angries on the Chiefs on the seconds. There you go, 3,000. I don't know if those have a really egregious celebration by Tyreek Hill or something like that. Who knows? But that is a start. I'm going to double click that there. So if you get the pop-up, it takes a second. I'm just going to put loves per day and do the same thing for angries. So anytime you have duplicative things, like that said Facebook, blah, 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 if you're going to say it in like 2, 3, 4, or even more things on your graph, just shorten it to something really sweet and then put it at the top, like Facebook reaction comparison. And there we go. So we can also change, since we have the same color scheme across the top and bottom, since they're both the same teams, we wouldn't want to get confusing. You can go to colors, edit colors, and let's get these a little more accurate. Chiefs red, Bengals are orange. That's a very close looking at it. Probably wouldn't pass accessibility if you were to publish this on the web if they're that close together. I don't know. Maybe it's just my vision, but there's a whole framework around how that would work. Obviously, UX folks have a good handle on things like that. The Rams, I guess, yellow. 49ers are also red. And the Chiefs could be yellow as the secondary color. So we're running out of colors when they are similar. Maybe Rams could be blue and I don't know if there's a gold that's there that's yellow. Yeah, that's probably the best we can do for that. Sounds good. And again, we can make the opacity a little lighter to see overlap if that's helpful, but you can still determine which team is which. And one thing you can do too, so I'm just gonna try out a lot of things here. You know, relax, we'll take these step at a time and don't worry about doing all of these things at once, just trying to get a feel for these different places on the screen. So there's where we had the data tab and we're pulling all these different variables. There's also this analytics tab. So you can take this average line and you can drag and drop it here. So I'm going to look at, so table is everything that would relate to this. So if we filtered this down to just today, then on this graph, then you would choose, if you only wanted to know the average for today, you would choose the pane. But if you wanted to just look at today, but you wanted to know what the average was for that whole time period, you would choose table for everything. So I'm going to choose table now anyway. And so now you can see there. So on average, 61 angries per day. So now when you're telling a data story, you can say the average is 61. And then on these certain days, we had, you know, the Rams had 1,192 instead of, 61. So that was whatever, X many times the average. And so now, even without doing a lot of math, it makes it really easy. You can say just 10 times or, 12 times the average or 20 times the average versus just saying, yeah, it looks like about half. You can actually start to have a little bit better conversations. That's one thing you can do. You can click on average and remove it. We're not going to use a ton of other ones here, but there's another kind of neat one, a trend line. So there are different math versions of trend line. We can just try a linear trend. So it's doing it for every team. So it is a little bit too much to look at. I would probably, let's right click on this or command click and duplicate. And what we can do here is take that football team. And so control or command, we can drag and drop that onto filter. So it keeps it where it started and it also drops it off up there. So you have it in both places. And so now we've got a filter and now we can look at just two. So now you have Chiefs versus Bengals and see what the trend line is. Looks like there's a marginal difference, a little bit higher for the Chiefs on loves per day ramping up, probably overweighted by this yesterday's increase there from that crazy game. They both look like they're slightly trending down on the angries per day. I guess a little more satisfied that there's a place in the playoffs so everyone can calm down. I don't know. So those are all speculation things, but you can actually go and look at the actual tweets, which we'll do in Twitter, and like see what might be happening there. So we could do, we already got, you have to have a new name. So we're going to do Bengals versus Chiefs. Sweet. All right, so what else can we do? We've done mostly line graphs and a couple bar charts. We could do something a little different. Let's choose football teams again. And let's see, what else can we pull? How about YouTube average post views per day? Sounds good. And I'm going to click over to the Show Me tab. Can I do anything yet? It says I need one or more dimensions or one or two more measures for the views per day. Let's change football teams to color. See what else we can figure out. This is actually kind of a fun way to do it. Oh, I think I know why that's not working. That is why I didn't catch that really quick either. It is a dimension and not a measure, so it's doing it in the weird way. It's kind of hard to explain, but it is not actually doing the math in the right way. So what we want is to right-click on that and convert it to a measure. So now we're down here. Now we have post views per day. There we go. I need to make more of those so you can see what's going on. But so here's like a simple chart, which actually, isn't bad on its own. You can see that on total, everyone has about maybe 9.5 million views for all of them combined, and you can see what that makes up there. Now I can change it to a pie chart, and you can do, I think, Control-Shift-B. Control-Shift-B makes it bigger. There's some quick ways that will do that here. You could fit entire view, and it'll change to fit, or fit width and height for some of the others. Control-Shift-B, though, will make that bigger. But like, okay, I have a circle. It just looks like a circle. I can't really tell what it is, but you can also do Control and drag and drop the football team to label. So now we know which one is which, although the color kind of gave it away. You can do multiple labels, though. So I want to do the same thing, Control, drag and drop to the label there. And now we've got a little bit more context. So with labels, I don't really recommend having a ton of them on there. You want to kind of be careful with too many. Or you can do different versions where you show just one labeled and then the next team you're talking about, and that kind of thing. So you can choose minimum and maximum. So there I just chose the min and max, so you know the max views looks like San Francisco 49ers have the max average post per day. So that's, wow, that is like almost double the Chiefs. Cool. And you can go here, and in this text field here on that labels thing in the mark tab, you can press the little ellipses there, and you can change all the formatting, and you can even add like a little text label. So a lot of these things, we can make them more human sounding by using writing. So if you wanted to get rid of all your other labels and you just got a screenshot of these two and you're talking about San Francisco versus the Chiefs, that's what you could do. You could just show the maximum and then unclick label minimum value. So there's just San Francisco. So lots of fun things you can do with it. You can even write out sentences and other stuff. There's a lot of cool use cases for that. So we're going to call that YouTube average views per day. So, and like we're talking about, ratios are a lot more powerful. So that average views per day, helps out, like, that Chief scenario yesterday where it would have spiked up an absolute ton. But, how did that do over the whole year? And this tells a little bit more accurate of the story. All right, let's try some other things. So start with okay, so we do have a few weeks, so that's fun. So maybe, what else could we have Instagram posts. How about Instagram? Let's see what's already done here. Instagram post likes, let's just go simple, drop it in there. So you can do a few things here. So this button up here is flipping the columns and rows. So sometimes one or the other looks better. You can adjust sizing below here as well, like that. And always make sure things fit and they're not cut off. If it's cut off, then how could you possibly read it? So you want to make sure it's like publish ready, and we're good to go. Right now it's sorting by the order in the data, which is kind of weird. You can also sort small to large or large to small. There's something funky going on with the 49ers there. I don't know what's going on, but oh, the size is weird too. Anyway. Cool. That makes more sense. All right. And we're going to do teams to color again. So it's really just kind of figuring out what presentation you like to see better, because there's a lot of different ways to try to see it. So yeah, I mean, just keep exploring, keep trying different things, keep trying the Show Me tab, and you'll have a lot of fun exploring. And there's just infinite ways to visualize all this data. You know, whatever works for your viewers and helps them understand the most quickly and helps you really get to the insights that you want. So a lot of these things are really tools for you to uncover the insight. Honestly, most of graphing when you're in like a professional job is so much work using this to figure out what those differences are, and then it goes into an appendix of a presentation, whether that's a written one like Amazon where it's printed out and it's like in the end and they have more of a story with the data before it, which we'll cover a lot. Or if it's like even to a CEO, you'll be giving a verbal presentation to him and you're using those slides as a backup so that when there's a question, you can like pull it out and be like, listen, this is what happened with the 49ers on January 16th. There were 5 million Instagram likes. This is what it did. This is what went really well. And this is what we're going to do to make sure we do that again or be ready for something where we can make that happen. So that is the kind of tool we have for this. So we'll call this Instagram. Okay. Keyboard. Fun. By week. And so as you notice, I did this by week. So I guess that's a good call out too. So the week will give us this kind of smoother look to it so that like day to day jump won't be as crazy. If I switch this to exact date, you're going to see a lot more variation. But does this really tell us much? So trying out especially like what range to zoom in or zoom out of is really key to figuring out if you're able to understand something that's important. Like if you look at stock data and like Tesla goes up 40% yesterday and then down 40% today, on average it's zero. So like week by week, you know, who cares that it went up and down? For the day traders, yeah, that's an issue. So this one, like, yeah, it went from there to there, and that was a huge drop, but that's happening every Sunday. So there's seasonality. So you're going to see that obviously in a lot of things across, you know, quarters and months and seasons versus even just weeks, obviously, for football. But we can change that to week number, and we're going to get a little bit more clear of an understanding of like what is absolutely different here with San Francisco versus the others. So yeah. All right, so that, let's save that. So saving in Tableau, you want to make sure you save it as a Tableau TWBX file. So the default is TWB, do not save it as a TWB. That is one without the data. In most cases, when I'm going to be doing presentations and talking with you and you're going to be turning in things like that sort of thing, we're going to want TWBX because it includes the data with that Tableau file. So we want to save it there so I can see the data. Otherwise, it's just a graph without data. It does not like me saving in that folder for some reason, so I'm going to save it in downloads. I do not recommend saving it in downloads. Please save it in a real folder so make sure it doesn't get corrupt and things like that. I'll let that save a second. All right, so this is the Revel IQ data, which is great. That's a lot of data about the data. So this isn't the actual post for all that. It's all of the attributes of a post. So let's go into a new Tableau file. If it is your same project, you would all be using the same file, but I'm doing things separate today. Maybe we have a Tableau coming up. Not quite yet. I'll let it think. That is where I went paragliding off of that cliff. And we have Tableau. All right. So again, you can connect to data here. What I'll also want you to get into a habit of is data, new data source. As we add more pieces of the same data to the same file, if it's not connected together, we just want to add more and just have it in one place, you're going to want to use data, new data source. And we're going to pick Excel. So we've got Bengals, Chiefs, and Rams fans in the class, so there is some data there. So let's see what we can do. I also have the hashtags for 13 seconds, which is how long it took Patrick Mahomes to get across the field and go to overtime. We have hashtags for Joe Burrow and Mahomes, and we have official accounts for Bengals, Chiefs, and Rams. So let's see. We'll go with Bengals first since we're teaching in Ohio. Welcome to the jungle, Houday, and whatnot. All right, so loading that up. This is data that we got from Twitter from a no-code tool that we'll be using later on called WayScript. It's really easy to use for the most part. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but it actually connects to the Twitter API without us having to develop anything. We can just kind of use a drag and drop thing, and then it goes to that account and then kind of loops through and then reads all that information and gives us a line of data with the actual tweet text, which you'll see here, called the tweet contents, and it has all of this stuff. So next stop, Kansas City. So the Bengals will be arriving in Arrowhead next week to have a bit of a battle, and that came in as ABC. So that's a text string. Obviously, that's the tweet content. We'll also talk about sentiment later on in this course. So sentiment in this case, I know you might know like brand sentiment, so like what customers are feeling about a brand. What this is doing here is reading this text, and AI is taking its model that it's been trained on, and it's trying to figure out like what level of positivity or negativity this is. Obviously, like there's a rich nuance on like communication, especially around like sarcasm or other things like that, or even emojis obviously are very difficult to figure out. Like, what does the skull and crossbones mean? Obviously, you know, Gen Z would say that means laughing, crying, but you know, that could also be used in a different way that is really hard to tell unless you look at the context of the rest of the tweet. So I would take it with a grain of salt, but it is kind of interesting to note if there are patterns between like positive and negative tweets doing well and having more likes and things like that. So much more to come on that, just kind of explaining what you'll see here on sentiment. Those are some neutral ones. You got some positive and negative. You see, let's see if they got what negative works. When you advance to the AMC championship game, I can't see the rest. Well, we'll find out if that's actually negative. It could be just a misinterpretation. All right, so we see retweet count, and then what I was expecting, dates are always tricky in data. They don't always come through great. So this is a date time. Since Twitter has that full thing laid out there, we definitely do want to know that the exact time of that. Obviously, when you're trying to figure out when to post and when things do well and when your users are awake, especially when you've got fans across the world or things like that, very helpful. So I think that's probably good to go, as long as favorites are numbers as well. So we are good with the data. I'm going to go over to the new sheets, and we can figure out what we have here. So let's drag and drop the tweet content and throws, because I want to see the actual tweets there. And we can always adjust these things. So that ABC is waiting for a number, and you can take these little arrows. This one's bigger, and you can even down arrow those to make them a little wider, and you can change the text here as well with some different options. Okay, So favorite counts could be fun to see. So I'm going to drop favorite count there. And I want to sort it the most to least. So we have, that's why you draft a kicker at 170,000. So we're going to call this top Twitter favorites, or top Twitter posts by favorites. So that's the kind of vernacular we use to describe things. It's kind of like by favorites is how we would say it. And there we go. So that's one thing we can do. One way we can make it a little bit easier to read, you can control-click content and drop it onto filters. And you can choose top by field, and you can do it by anything. So there's a lot of different combinations you could do here. If you just did, let's do top 7 by the tweet favorites. Click OK. So instead of having 2,000 there to scroll through, this is just the top that we're going to talk about today. And let's also do something a little bit different. I'm going to drag and drop that onto color. And so now we've got a fade. So the darkest is the top, and we didn't do it any differently. It's just one thing. I'm going to use that for something else later. But I'm going to change this drop down from automatic into a square, which is kind of neat. And now I can go to color, edit colors, and let's see, let's go orange to, that's sort of black, whatever. Okay. We'll use orange to gold. Anyway, you can change it. You can do stepped color instead of all the gradients. You can flip it like that, so it's red lower or red higher. It looks a little bit smoother if you use the gradient, but it depends on what your purposes are. But that's kind of a highlight table. So one thing that's interesting about this too is you may not even need the number. So you could just do the top and bottom. So how do you make it less overwhelming for a viewer so that you don't have to have them getting a headache reading millions of numbers? Because I know you do. I know I do at some point too. So that is one way you can do it. You might not need them at all. If you are talking just about which ones are better than the other, and you know somewhere around 100,000, you're just trying to talk about the content, and you're like, this is the type that does the best. This is, great, good, okay. So you want to think of how do you chunk things down for a user to be able to have simple concepts like, stoplight, red, yellow, green, although that's, for a color wise, that's not great for accessibility because of color blindness. So be careful with that. But my point is a concept of 3 things that are small, medium, large, so Goldilocks style. That helps with a lot of things. So there you go, top Twitter posts by favorites. See if we can do maybe one more or maybe 2 more, and we'll go with that. Let's add a new data source and pull in Excel. So we got Bengals, we got Rams, which their Twitter handle is Rams NFL, not Rams, because that's actually Rams, which is a popular name in other parts of the world, which the Rams apparently have not paid enough money for. So data is coming in, taking a second. And here we go. So here is our Rams data. We could actually combine this because in the data it says which account it's from. So it has @Rams NFL, and the Bengals it had @Bengals. So we could link it together. We're actually going to do that next month. But for now, let's just check it out and graph it. And let's see by weekday, what is the sentiment score? So I'm going to take sentiment score in here and drop it there, kind of like we did with favorites and everything. Let's see if we can play with the presentation a bit to make it look big enough. And so it did a sum. So this is one of those cases where we really need to step back from the data and think what do we want to do? So the sentiment score is something from 0 to, or -1 to 1 on if it's positive or not. So 0 is neutral. So you wouldn't want to add it up. That would just be adding up 90% and an 80% of your grades and saying you had 170%. Like it doesn't make sense. So you're really looking for what the average of those sentiment scores were for that day of the week. So now you know the Rams by day of week seem to be more positive on Monday and Friday. So it'd be interesting to compare this across the brands, but that means their tweets are using language that is more positive on those days. And funnily enough, they seem to be slightly less positive on Sundays. I don't know. So that would be something to investigate. So like if I were to present on this, I would pull up their Sunday tweets and be like, oh, what's happening with that? Like what kind of words are they using, and what's the effect on favorites. So I'm going to take favorites and drop it onto color. So while the positivity seems low, the number of favorites is high on Sunday for the Rams. So Rams sentiment by weekday. So this is just kind of that idea of using two variables. We've got favorites, we've got sentiments, and seeing if we can use that to help make more of a complete data story for what's happening than just a simple bar chart of the favorites, which doesn't really get us anywhere. We want to know why they are favorited, what's different. You know, one of these things is just like the other, is not like the other. Okay, yep, definitely getting tired. So just make sure you go beyond the defaults and into something a little bit more interesting. See if you can try different colors and gradients and things like that. So give that an apply. Let's see what goes there. You can change things up a little bit and add maybe a label. You can also right-click on these numbers and click Format. And so Format lets you do a few different things. You can change, that's on so you've got the axis, which is the left, and then you've got the pane, which is within the graph here, and you can change the different number formatting, make it a little shorter and more pleasant to look at, and change different parts of it as well. So all sorts of things to work with and change and clean up, but this is just kind of a basic start. Let's do one more. All right, I'll give you Joe Burrow. I'm not going to like this next week. All right, so this is for the hashtag Joe Burrow. So not just the other tweets we're looking at were the official ones from the official accounts of the Rams and the Bengals. This one is a hashtag, so it will be coming from different accounts. In that case, that wasn't obvious. But just to state it out there, so tweet username will be different. So that could be fun to look at. Let's see what we want to see. Maybe favorite counts. I'm just going to go by the username to see who are the people that are getting the most likes talking about Joe Burrow. So a lot of this is like asking yourself questions like, what do I want to uncover the answer to? Like, who is most influential talking about this subject, perhaps? So let's try username, and we've got some favorite tweets. I'll flip that, descending, and let's try a different kind of chart. Here's a bubble one, packed bubbles. It's not really one of my favorites, but it could be fun for this in a way because we're just trying to see some scale. It's not really good for telling things that are pretty close together because I don't know, it's a little bit of an optical illusion on that, but you can tell giant versus small for sure. And let's take username, put it on label. See if we can see it. Maybe not. Let's see. Favorite counts. I'm not liking that one. Okay, well, let's explore a little bit, see what we can do. See if we can find something that looks a little bit better. Now, there we go. Must just, I know, I think I have the setting here. It won't let you overlap, so if I did, because it'd be a disaster with those, although it's kind of funny. There you go. So it looks like our three top ones, Joe Squawk, Zamude, and JPA football, possibly players, I don't know. So you can check that out. That's kind of fun. So favorites, what else we got? Retweets. So I'm going to drop retweets onto colors just to have a second thing to see what happens. And looks like Sport Tunes is pretty effective at getting retweets. These are in the middle, but you've got some sleepers over here. So they got a, people favorite it a lot, but to retweet it, that's kind of a next level. You're trying to share it with your own followers, a little bit of virality. So that's why, even though this graph is goofy, and you may not even use it to like show a CEO, I probably would not because it is that way. But just by looking at this, I don't have to look at 400 of these. I just immediately know there's some interesting ones that I should follow up on. I should absolutely check those out and look at the tweets. And these were probably ones people knew already, but this could be something where maybe your media organization should be reaching out to that person or interacting with them to help get even more reach. So something cool to think about there. So Joe, we would want a better title for that in the future, but yeah, there you go. That is a lot of Tableau in a very short time. Please do not think you have to do any of that at all, but it was just kind of an example of trying to figure out what all this is on the screen. What do these things do? Every single one of them, we're going to go by step at a time in future videos and things like that. But I know a lot of people ask for, what is this? What am I missing? Where can I do these different pieces of the software without going through like a full textbook or without watching a lot of those training videos and just getting something personalized to us. So happy to do one-on-ones and walk you through things and help you with revisions of your own stuff, and it'll all be tied to some great data that we'll work with your own pieces there. And that's about it. So thank you, everyone. Welcome to the Intro to Analytics with Tableau and many more things to come.